Welcome back. So, if you've been following my story, you know that my journey hasn't been easy. But one thing that I've learned is that, healing is possible. It's not pretty, it's definitely not easy, but it's worth it. And today I'm going to share the final part where I go into how I began to rebuild, rediscover who I am, and how I turn my pain into purpose. So if you've ever felt like you were lost or wondered how you would get through a tough time, I hope that this part of my story speaks to you. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. And this part's called Rebuilding, Rediscovery, and the Creation of Mothers Overcoming Misfortune. Oh, the process of rebuilding myself didn't come all at once. It was gradual, often messy, and filled with moments where I doubted if I would ever truly heal. I spent countless hours with guilt and shame and questioning how I had allowed myself to stay in relationships that drained me and made me feel so small. I'd spent years sacrificing for others, trying to be everything for everyone, and always putting myself last. At first, I felt stuck in a cycle of regret, kept asking myself, why didn't I leave sooner? How did I let this happen? But what I realized, those questions weren't really helping me move forward. The only way I was going to rebuild was to stop looking backward with blame and start focusing on small steps toward healing. And those first few steps weren't easy. I had to start small. At first, it was as simple as practicing self care, a warm bath here, a walk there. I started setting small boundaries, thing I'd never dared to do before. I began doing things I hadn't done in years, like nail care. It wasn't just a job for me, it started to become a creative outlet and a reminder of my worth. I found joy in the little things, like taking the kids fishing because that was something that I loved to do as a kid, or sitting quietly with a good book, or just allowing myself a moment to breathe. But healing isn't just about rediscovering what makes you happy. It's also about confronting the parts of yourself that you've ignored for far too long. And for me, that meant facing the reality that I had built my whole identity around being the rock for everyone else. The problem solver, the helper. I had given so much of myself that there was barely anything left. And letting go of that role was incredibly difficult. The guilt of stepping back was overwhelming at times. I had always been the one to help, even when my help wasn't appreciated. But for once, I gave myself permission to prioritize my own needs and my own healing. Healing isn't a straight line. There were days when I felt like I was making progress, and then there were nights when I cried myself to sleep, mourning the years I had lost and the version of myself I had buried under years of trauma. I felt anger, sadness, and regret, sometimes all those feelings at once. But every tear was a step forward. Every emotion I allowed myself to feel was a release. I had to learn to say no, something I had never really been good at. At first, the guilt of saying no was paralyzing. I'd spent my whole life believing that just saying no made me selfish or unkind. But the more I practiced setting boundaries, the more I realized that saying no didn't make me a bad person. It made me someone who was finally taking care of herself. With every boundary I set, I grew a little stronger. I stopped defining myself by what I did for others and started exploring what I truly wanted. I stopped living for everyone else and I started living for me. This didn't happen overnight, but with each passing day, I felt a little bit more like myself again. And as I worked through my own pain and rediscovery, something shifted in me. I realized that I wasn't just surviving, I was transforming. I began to see my struggles not as something to be ashamed of, but as lessons. I started to wonder, what if this really could help someone else? What if everything I had been through could serve a greater purpose? And that's when the idea to create Mothers Overcoming Misfortune came about. I wanted to build something meaningful, something that could help other women who were feeling lost, broken, and overwhelmed by life. I knew what it was like to feel stuck, to feel like you're drowning in your struggles with no way out. And I didn't want anyone else to feel like they had to navigate that darkness alone. Mothers Overcoming Misfortune became my mission. I wanted to create a space where women, especially mothers, could come together and realize they weren't alone in their pain. It would be a space where we could share our stories, rebuild our identities, and refocus on what truly mattered. Too often, we pretend everything's fine when it's not. We hide our struggles because we think no one will understand. And I wanted to change that. But this isn't just a space for sharing stories, it's a place for real growth and healing. It's about providing tools, support, and a community where women can truly begin to reclaim their power and rediscover who they are. Mothers Overcoming Misfortune is about turning pain into purpose and showing women that their struggles don't define them. Starting this community was my way of taking everything I had been through, the heartbreak, the mistakes, and the lessons, and turning it into something that could help others. It's not just about me anymore. It's about all of us coming together to support each other and move forward. I know what it's like to feel like your story is over, like you've lost too much to ever rebuild. But I also know that your misfortune doesn't define you. It's just one chapter in your story, and your story isn't finished yet. So, as I close this part of the story, I just want to leave you with this. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It's not going to be overnight. It is a journey, but it's doable. It's doable if you make the effort, if you take the time to truly heal from the inside out. You have to learn to accept your flaws, accept who you are, and be unapologetic about that. And Mothers Overcoming Misfortune is a place where you can do that. It's something that's really near and dear to my heart because I felt like I was going through this alone. I had no one when I went through this journey. And I don't want anyone to feel like that. So, with that being said, thank you so much for following this story. And if you felt like it resonated with you, please like, share, subscribe, and I hope to see you in the community. Till next time, bye.